A tourist, convinced that her money entitled her to anything, crossed the forbidden line and reached out toward the guard's bearskin hat. But his sharp step forward and the glint of his sword left everyone in shock. What happened next made the crowd hold its breath. The morning over London unfolded like a painting. A light mist hovered over Buckingham Palace, and the air was filled with a quiet sense of anticipation. Tourists flocked to the area, rustling maps, clicking cameras, and debating the best spot for a photo with the guards. Amid the chaos, James Watson, clad in a crimson uniform and a majestic bearskin hat, stood like a statue. His posture was impeccable, his gaze focused. He was the embodiment of British tradition and discipline. Tourists could do whatever they pleased, but James knew his duty: to remain unyielding. Then she appeared in the crowd. A middle-aged woman with an air of arrogance, her vivid attire a jarring contrast to the soft hues of the morning mist. She moved forward confidently, casting fleeting, mocking glances around her. Her stride seemed to declare, "I own this moment!" "A lively day, isn't it?" she called out loudly as she approached James. Her words were clearly meant to provoke a reaction from the crowd. James, of course, remained motionless. His job demanded absolute composure. But the crowd stilled, watching the scene unfold. The woman, unsatisfied by his silence, took another step. Her gaze fell to the white line on the pavement. The boundary tourists were forbidden to cross. With a slight smirk, she stepped over it. "Come on, smile," she teased, stopping just a meter away from James. The crowd's laughter grew. Cameras quickly turned toward her, as if it were a live performance. "What is she doing? Does she seriously think this is okay?" Someone in the audience thought aloud. Yes, she did. To her, the guard was merely part of the decor, created for her amusement. She moved closer still. Now she was so near that she could almost touch the brim of James's hat. One tourist whispered, "This is too much. Where's her sense of decency?" But the woman either didn't notice or pretended not to notice the crowd's disapproval. She extended a hand toward James's hat, her gesture saying, "Let's see how far I can go." James remained unflinching. His gaze was fixed straight ahead, as if he were oblivious to what was happening. But his hand tightened ever so slightly as she drew near. At that moment, a camera in the crowd caught everything: the silent, tense reaction of the guard and the growing indignation of the onlookers. The crowd was divided. Some laughed and egged her on. "Come on, maybe he'll blink." Others whispered, "How disrespectful. Does she think this is funny?" This was where the real conflict began. James, stoic and dignified, versus her brazen audacity. This scene wasn't just a clash between a person and tradition. It was a collision of eras, a world of respect and discipline versus the selfish consumerism, where everything is seen as entertainment or a commodity. Someone in the crowd shouted, "Hey, leave him alone!" But the woman only smirked. The crowd held its breath. What would happen next? Finding no reaction, the woman, radiating confidence, raised an umbrella. It was an act of such audacity that the crowd seemed to collectively hold its breath. Slowly and deliberately, she touched James's shoulder, as if testing the limits of her own boldness. "Well, are you even alive?" she sneered loudly, speaking more to the audience than to James himself. "Or is all this just a tourist show?" Murmurs of disapproval rippled through the crowd. An elderly man, leaning on a cane, grumbled irritably, "What kind of behavior is this? Someone should send her home for some proper manners." James continued to stand like a rock, but his eyes revealed a flicker of resolve. And then, to everyone's surprise, he barked out loudly, "Ma'am, step back behind the line." His voice boomed like thunder on a clear day. It wasn't just an order. It was a moment where the patience honed by years of service finally reached its limit. The crowd flinched, and a few people broke into applause. But the woman, instead of retreating, only smirked. "Oh, come on, it's just a job, right?" she said with brazen confidence. She took another step forward, defying not only James but the very idea of discipline itself. "Go ahead, do something interesting." The crowd erupted into debate. "Is she serious? This is the Royal Guard, not some theme park," one woman whispered, clearly shocked. "Leave him alone," someone yelled from the back, but others cheered her on. "Yeah, maybe he'll finally crack a smile," shouted a group of young tourists filming the scene. James stood his ground, immovable as ever, but the tension in the air became almost palpable. His resolute gaze said more than words ever could. He wasn't about to succumb to her provocations or jeers. Meanwhile, the spectators couldn't tear their eyes away from the unfolding drama. Some recorded, others whispered, and some openly expressed their outrage at the woman's behavior. "Who does that? This is just beyond disrespectful," a woman in the crowd exclaimed, earning nods of agreement from those around her. The woman, ignoring both the crowd's displeasure and the guard's command, remained in her place, clearly reveling in her victory. At that moment, the tension reached its peak. James, maintaining his composure, prepared internally for what might come next. The crowd stood frozen, anticipation thick in the air. Even time itself seemed to pause to witness this standoff. What would happen next? The woman, basking in her triumph, reached out her hand, clearly intending to touch James's bearskin hat. She had certainly seen the signs forbidding such actions, and by now, even the crowd's disapproval was evident. But her eyes conveyed her thoughts. "I'm the star here, and rules don't apply to me." As her fingers neared the hat, James took a sharp step forward. The sword at his side gleamed in the sunlight, clearly marking the boundary of the white line she had crossed. "Ma'am, this is your final warning to step back," he said, his voice low and resolute. It wasn't just an order. It was an assertion of unwavering authority and dignity. The crowd gasped. This unexpected move jolted even those who had been cheering her on, forcing them to grasp the seriousness of the moment. Cameras instantly zoomed in on James, and applause broke out from some in the audience. "Now that's a real man!" exclaimed an older woman in the crowd, clapping enthusiastically. Even those who had laughed at the woman's antics fell silent. Her confidence suddenly gave way to confusion. "I just wanted to take a photo," she stammered, her voice noticeably weaker than before. "It's not that big of a deal, right?" At that moment, an unexpected scene unfolded. A young family approached the boundary line, a man in glasses, a woman with a warm smile, and a little boy in a wheelchair. The child held a teddy bear in his hands and looked up at James with awe. The guard, maintaining his air of majesty, bent down slightly to shake the boy's hand. The movement was simple, yet profoundly human, dissolving the tension in the air. "You're my hero," the boy said softly, his smile lighting up his face. The child's mother, struggling to hold back tears, said, "Thank you. You've given him a moment he'll never forget." The crowd, which had been divided moments before, erupted into cheers. Applause and shouts of approval filled the air. Many recorded this touching moment, eager to share a story of witnessing something extraordinary. "That's what true character looks like," shouted a man from the back, and his words were quickly echoed. The woman, who had been trying to provoke James, now faded into the background. She retreated behind the line, pretending she had never been part of the scene. This moment served as a powerful reminder to everyone present. The Royal Guard is not a tourist attraction, but a symbol of honor, resilience, and humanity. For many, this was not just a lesson, but a source of inspiration. James, adjusting his hat, resumed his stance, as if the entire event had been just another day on duty. But the onlookers knew better. This was a day they would remember forever. The once confident woman turned beet red. Her arrogance evaporated as swiftly as the morning mist. Amidst the laughter and scorn of the crowd, she hurriedly stepped back behind the line, acting as though nothing had happened. "Well, that's a lesson," declared a man in a hat, clapping his hands. "Serves her right," chimed in a woman with a stroller, as someone nearby shouted, "Bravo, guard!" The crowd buzzed with excitement as cameras kept recording. It felt as though the world had restored balance. Indeed, footage of the moment quickly went viral on social media. Online discussions exploded with passionate commentary. "What a legend. This is exactly how tourists should be taught respect." This is a prime example of why traditions deserve respect. "The strength of his character is incredible. Much respect," Of course, some tried to defend the woman, but their voices were drowned out by overwhelming disapproval. People like her think everything is for sale. The guard proved there are things far above petty arrogance. James, unfazed by the sudden wave of attention, adjusted his hat and returned to his position. He once again stood like a majestic statue, as though nothing had happened. For him, it was simply another day of service. But for everyone who had witnessed the scene, James was no longer just a part of tradition. He had become a symbol of what the Royal Guard truly represents: honor, resilience, and humanity. This moment became a poignant reminder of something profound. James not only upheld his dignity and professionalism, but also displayed compassion by shaking the boy's hand. That day, he reminded everyone that the Royal Guard is more than uniforms and rituals. It's a living representation of respect, dedication, and a bridge between the past and present. As the crowd dispersed, they carried with them a sense of pride for having witnessed a moment of truth.